It almost defies physics, doesn't it? I mean, you look at any other band from that era, from the early 70s,
Right.
they're gone, they're retired, or they're on a nostalgia circuit. ACDC is still filling 60,000-seat arenas. It's remarkable.
And that is exactly why we're doing this deep dive. We're not just here to read tour dates off a press release. I really want to get into the how. How does a band that played its first gig on New Year's Eve, 1973, still have the juice? Especially when you look at the source material we've pulled. Biographies, interviews about, dementia, hearing loss. This isn't just a band, it's a study in survival.
Survival's absolutely the right word, but I think it's also, it's a philosophical puzzle. The ship of Theseus paradox.
The thought experiment, right. If you replace every plank of a ship, one by one, is it still the same ship?
Exactly. And that is the question hanging right over this 2026 tour. If you replace the singer, the bassist, the drummer, the rhythm guitarist, is it still ACDC?
Or is ACDC just a sound, a frequency that exists no matter who's playing it?
That's the question.
The ship of Theseus with Marshall Stax. Because, the lineup hitting the stage in São Paulo this year, it's a bit of a Frankenstein band, isn't it?
It is. It's this fascinating mix of legacy and just pure necessity. You've got the two undeniable pillars up front. Angus Young on lead guitar.
Still in the schoolboy outfit.
Amazingly, yes. And Brian Johnson on vocals. But the engine room, the part that actually drives that sound, it's completely different from the classic records.
Let's break that down because a casual fan might not even realize. We know Malcolm Young passed away, and we know Cliff Williams, the bassist, retired. So who's actually holding down the fort in 2026?
Okay, so on rhythm guitar, you have Stevie Young. And this is a crucial point. He isn't just some hired gun. He's Angus's nephew.
Wow.
He filled in for Malcolm way back in the 80s when he was getting sober, and then he stepped in for good in 2014, and Angus says he plays with the same psychic connection.
A genetic sound.
Yeah, you could say that. But the bass and drums, that's where the purists get a little worked up. Cliff Williams is out of the touring picture, so you've got Chris Chaney on bass.
The guy from Jane's Addiction
The
Room.
very same. A fantastic player, but the drums, that's the one. Phil Rudd, the human metronome, he's not there.
And we will get into the absolutely wild reasons why he's not there in a bit. It involves, hitmen and house arrest. It's insane.
It's a whole movie plot.
But for this tour, it's Matt Lag behind the kit.
Right. And that brings us right back to the ship of Theseus. Phil Rudd had this specific swing. He played just behind the beat. It was greasy and perfect. Lag is a machine, a great drummer, but does he have that swing?
And does it matter? In a stadium, if he doesn't.
That's what people will be debating. As long as Angus is doing the duck walk, maybe it's still ACDC. But to understand this ability to just swap out parts, you have to go back to the very beginning. And not Sydney, I'm talking about Glasgow.
This is the context that gets missed all the time. The Young family, Malcolm, Angus, their older brother George, they didn't start out as rock stars. They started in serious poverty in Scotland.
Right.
There was one detail in the biographies that just floored me. We always kind of joke about how small Angus and Malcolm were.
Yeah.
Malcolm was 5'3", Angus is 5'2". But there might be a really dark reason for that.
Yeah, it wasn't just genetics. The biographies strongly suggest it was environmental. They grew up in a housing project in Glasgow where the water was contaminated with lead.
Lead poisoning.
Their small stature was likely a direct result of childhood lead poisoning.
That's horrifying. It completely reframes their energy for me. It's not just little guys who rock hard.
Yeah.
It's a physical result of surviving a toxic environment.
They were fighting from day one. In 1963, the family used the 10-pound POMS program.
Right, the government scheme.
Yeah, you take 10 pounds, you get passage to Australia. They were basically refugees from a brutal winter and no jobs.
So they get to Australia, and a decade later, New Year's Eve, 73, the band forms. And, for a group with such a tough image, the story of the name is, it's pretty funny.
It's great. It was on the back of a vacuum cleaner, ACDC. To them, it just meant power, high voltage.
Though they spent years having to explain it didn't mean something else.
Oh, yeah. They had no idea. It was also a slang term for bisexuality. They were just these working class guys who wanted to be loud. They were completely baffled by the question.
They just wanted to rock. And that first gig at Checkers in Sydney sounds like it was a total disaster.
It was chaos. The club manager kept pulling the plug on them because they were just too loud. Angus wasn't even in the schoolboy uniform yet. He was just in jeans.
And they didn't have enough songs.
Not even close. They were playing Stones and Beatles covers, and the accounts say they were just making up song titles on the spot to fill the set.
That's the hustle right there. They weren't built in a lab. They figured it out live. But then they find their voice, or I should say, their driver becomes their voice.
Bon Scott, the man who defined their whole attitude. It's classic rock lore, but it's true. He was the band's driver first.
Can you imagine calling an Uber and one of the greatest frontmen of all time is behind the wheel?
He brought that grit, that street poetry, highway to hell, dirty deeds. He was dangerous and funny all at once. And just as they were about to break big in America, tragedy, February 1980.
The first huge test of the ship of Theseus. Bon Scott is found dead.
In a parked car in London, the official cause was acute alcohol poisoning, just a cold, lonely death. Now, one of the biographers we looked at, Jesse Fink, he floats the theory that heroin might have been involved, but that's never been proven. The bottom line was the face of the band was gone.
And most bands would just stop there. I mean, Led Zeppelin did when John Bonham died. It's the respectful thing to do, so why didn't they?
It came down to his parents. Bon Scott's parents actually went to the band and told them explicitly that Bon would have wanted them to continue.
Wow.
That permission gave them the resolve, and it set the pattern for the next 40-plus years. When disaster strikes, you don't stop, you work through it.
And that work became Back in Black, which leads us to Brian Johnson and this incredible bit of irony that Bon Scott had basically scouted him years before.
It feels like fate. Bon had seen Brian play with his old band, Geordie. He came back and told the guys, I saw the singer. He screams like Little Richard. He's amazing. So when Bon passed, they remembered that. It was like he'd left them a recommendation.
His own successor.
In a way, yeah. So Brian steps in. They release Back in Black, which we should remember is a tribute album. The all-black cover is for mourning, and they become the biggest band on the planet.
But then you fast forward to 2016, the Rock or Bust tour. And the next huge crisis hits.
This was the moment I think a lot of fans thought, okay, this has to be it. Brian Johnson gets an ultimatum from his doctors.
Stop touring now or go completely deaf.
Total, permanent hearing loss. And he had to leave mid-tour. Can you imagine?
It's devastating.
And in his autobiography, The Lives of Brian, he really opens up about the depression. He said he couldn't even watch the band play without him. He described it as finding a stranger sitting in your favorite chair.
And that stranger, of course, was Axl Rose, which was a whole other thing.
A surreal chapter, for sure.
Yeah.
But Brian's reaction to this, he didn't just sit home. He went back to his other passion, auto racing.
Right.
But he describes it in a really chilling way. He says he stopped caring if he died on the track. He felt his life's purpose was gone, so he was just driving with a death wish.
That shows you what this means to them. It's not just a job. But because this is ACDC, technology comes to the rescue. How is he even on stage now?
It's basically a medical miracle. A specialist developed this new in-ear technology for him. It's not just an earplug. It acts like a second eardrum. It bypasses the damaged parts of his ear.
So he can hear the band without doing more damage.
Exactly. He can hear in stereo again. It is the only reason this 2026 tour is even happening.
So the singer is saved by science fiction. But we have to talk about the member who couldn't be saved, the architect of it all.
Malcolm Young.
Malcolm, yeah. He was the one. We all focus on Angus and the frontmen, but anyone who knows the band knows Malcolm was the boss. He was the rhythm guitarist, the founder, the brains, the discipline.
And his decline was just so long and tragic.
It was a long goodbye. He'd already fought alcoholism and won. He stepped away in '88 to get sober. Angus told him, I don't want to see you dead here. But then came the dementia.
And this was happening while they were still touring. Yes, during the Black Ice tour in the late 2000s, there are these heartbreaking accounts of him having to relearn the riffs that he wrote. He'd forget his own songs.
Oh, that's awful.
He retired in 2014 and passed away in 2017. And to make it even heavier, their older brother George, their mentor and producer, he died just a month before Malcolm.
The family was just decimated in a few weeks.
Brutal. But again, what was the solution? Stevie Young. Keep it in the bloodline. They refused to let the sound die.
So we've covered death, deafness, dementia, but we haven't even touched on the complete chaos of the rhythm section, the legal stuff.
Ah, yes, Phil Rudd.
Man, this is unbelievable. Phil is the classic drummer.
Yeah.
But in 2014, his life just goes completely off the rails.
It reads like a movie script. He's arrested in New Zealand. The charges are possession of meth and threatening to kill.
Threatening to kill.
Yeah. He allegedly tried to hire a hitman to take care of a business dispute. He ended up under house arrest.
And yet, this is the part that blows my mind. He came back. He played on the Power Up album.
He did. They brought him back into the studio. It shows this strange loyalty, or maybe just how much they valued his specific sound. But for this tour, he's out again, replaced by Matt Lag. It's just another disaster they've had to navigate.
And it seems to follow them. It's not always self-inflicted either. The Salt Lake City concert in 1991.
A dark, dark moment. 3 teenagers were crushed to death in a crowd surge. The band was devastated. Brian Johnson says it still haunts them.
And then there was the Night Stalker connection in the 80s.
The satanic panic.
Right.
Richard Ramirez, the serial killer, leaves an ACDC hat at a crime scene.
And claims the song Night Prowler inspired him.
The media went insane. ACDC suddenly stood for Antichrist Devil's Child. Churches were burning their records. It was a full-blown moral panic.
It sounds absurd now, but at the time, that's a career killer.
It could have been, but what did they do? Did they issue an apology? Did they change their logo?
They did nothing.
Absolutely nothing. They knew who they were. They were a bar band singing about rock and roll. So they just turned the amps up louder and drowned out the noise.
Which brings us back to the core question. We've listed an insane number of disasters. Why are they still doing this? Angus is over 70. Brian's nearly 80. They have all the money they could ever need. Why add more tour dates in 2026?
I think Brian Johnson said it best. He said, "We are just working class guys." They don't see this as some lofty art. They see it as a trade. You get up, you put on your uniform, literally in Angus's case, and you go to work.
It's not about fame. It's just the job.
It's the job. And that's why they've lasted. They never chased trends. They never went new wave or grunge. They just kept making the same thing over and over, no matter who was standing on that stage.
So when we see them this year, we're not just watching a concert. We're watching a survival story.
Absolutely. They survived Glasgow. They survived the death of Bon, the death of Malcolm, the implosion of Phil.
Your deafness.
Brian.
And here they are, still selling out stadiums.
Still selling out stadiums.
But I want to leave you with that thought we started with, the ship of Theseus. When you go to that show in 2026, Angus Young is the only person on that stage who was there in the classic 70s era.
The only one.
So at what point does a band stop being a band and start being, I don't know, a tribute to itself? If Angus retired, could ACDC continue with no original members? Just the brand.
Is ACDC a group of people, or is it just a specific frequency, a certain kind of electricity?
Or maybe, just maybe, when the amps are that loud and 60,000 people are screaming along, the question doesn't even matter.
I think that might be the answer right there.
If you get a chance today, go back and listen to Back in Black. But listen to it as a document of grief and resilience. It hits very different when you know the story behind it. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.